My name is Adrian Cole. I'm 31 years old. And last week, my father looked me dead in the eye and said I was nothing but a burden in his house. Then he pointed at the front door and said, "Get out." Today, I didn't even get a chance to respond. My suitcase was already being dragged down the hallway by my own brother. But what my father didn't know was that he wasn't kicking out his son. He was kicking out the legal owner of the house he thought he controlled. And 2 days later, he would sign a lease agreement to stay in it. Under my name. Let me take you back. Because it didn't start with yelling. It started with silence. The kind of silence where you slowly disappear inside your own family. Growing up, my younger brother Jason was the golden one. Perfect grades. Perfect smile. Perfect excuses. And me? I was the responsible one. The one who didn't need help. The one who didn't deserve attention. At 18, I worked nights at a gas station while Jason got a brand new motorcycle for motivation. At 21, I paid my own tuition while Jason's future investments were fully covered. And when I moved back home at 26 to save money, that's when the rent started. $700 a month to live in my childhood room. I paid it without arguing because I thought that's what sons do. But the truth? I wasn't a son in that house. I was a tenant they tolerated. And then came the letter. Cream envelope. Thick paper. Legal seal. Sent from a law office I'd never heard of. I opened it in my car and everything changed. Mr. Adrian Cole, you are the sole beneficiary of the property located at 17 Brookfield Avenue. I stopped reading. My house? The house I was paying rent in? The letter continued. Transferred under the irrevocable estate of Margaret Cole, effective upon your 30th birthday. My grandmother. The woman who always told me, don't argue with your father, just observe him. She wasn't just watching. She was preparing. I sat in that car for 20 minutes staring at the address like it was a glitch in reality. Because here's the thing, my father didn't own that house. He never did. He just believed he did. And belief is a dangerous thing in a family built on control. I called the lawyer. A calm voice answered. Mr. Cole, we've been waiting for your call. That sentence alone made my stomach drop. Your grandmother placed the property in trust 12 years ago. Full ownership transfers to you. But your father retains residency rights under one condition. He paused. I leaned forward. As long as he pays rent to the legal owner. My mouth went dry. Which is you. I didn't speak. Because suddenly every memory reassembled itself. Every insult. Every time I was called useless. Every time Jason was praised for taking care of the family. They weren't just favoritism. They were ignorance, living in my house. And I had been funding it. Quietly. Every month. For 18 months I had been paying utilities, taxes, repairs, while they believed Jason was supporting everything. He even told relatives he was keeping the house afloat. A lie I unknowingly financed. But I didn't move. Not yet. Because I wanted to see what my family would do when they thought they still had control. That's when everything started shifting fast. First the arguments, then the accusations, then the breakdown. And then last Friday night my father snapped. He slammed his hand on the dining table and said, "This is my house, I decide who stays." Jason stood behind him smirking. My mother said nothing, just like always. And then my father pointed at me. "You're the burden here, Adrian. Pack your things. Get out." No hesitation. No emotion. Just disposal. Jason walked me to my room like I was a stranger. "Don't make this harder than it is," he whispered. I looked at him and said nothing. Because he had no idea. He wasn't escorting me out. He was escorting the owner of the house to the front door. And I left quietly. No shouting. No argument. Just silence. But the next morning my phone rang at 6:13 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice shaking. "Adrian, please tell me you didn't approve the lease extension." I blinked. "What lease extension?" She hesitated. Then said, "The one your father signed, to stay in your property." A pause. My grip tightened. "Signed under your name." And that's when I realized, they didn't just kick me out. They tried to lock me out of my own house. And unknowingly, they just gave me what I needed. Evidence. Because that lease was never supposed to exist. And now, they were living in my house, on paper, under my authority. I stared at the ceiling of my rented apartment that night and smiled for the first time in years. Because my father thought he was in control. Jason thought he was winning. But both of them had just signed something they never read carefully. Something that would change everything. And tomorrow morning, they were going to find out exactly what they had done. The next morning, I didn't sleep. I just waited. Because once people sign something they don't understand, reality doesn't wait politely. It arrives. At 9:07 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Nathan Pierce, my lawyer. His voice wasn't calm. It was precise. Controlled. Which meant something was wrong, but fixable. Adrian, he said. They signed it. I sat up. The lease. Yes. A pause. And more importantly, they signed it under your legal ownership record. I frowned. I don't understand. Nathan exhaled slowly. Your father didn't just sign a rental agreement. He signed a tenant contract acknowledging you as the property owner. Silence. That means, he continued, they legally recognized you as landlord without realizing it. My stomach tightened. And Jason? I asked. Nathan paused. He co-signed as a witness. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just ignorance anymore. This was irreversible. Nathan continued. There's something else. They've already moved paperwork into county records for utility transfers. They think they're formalizing ownership control. I almost laughed. They're trying to organize paperwork for a house they don't own? Yes. A pause. And Adrian, they're about to escalate it further. I think they're planning to refinance. That sentence hit differently. Refinance. On my property. Without knowing it's mine. I stood up slowly. How long do I have before they realize? Nathan hesitated. Maybe days. Maybe weeks. But when they do, they'll try to fight it. A beat. But legally? They've already admitted ownership is not theirs. I hung up and just sat there. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was structure collapsing under its own lies. And I hadn't even pushed it. They did. That afternoon, I went back to the house. My house. But they didn't know I was coming. When I pulled into the driveway, Jason was outside washing his car. Like nothing happened. Like he hadn't escorted me out of my own life. He looked up and smiled. Oh, you're back to grab more things? I stepped out of the car slowly. No, I said. I came home. He laughed lightly. Adrian, don't start this again. Dad already told you, I interrupted him. Jason, do you know who owns this house? He rolled his eyes. Dad does. Obviously. I nodded slowly. That's where you're wrong. He froze slightly. But only for a second. Then shrugged. Whatever you say. And walked inside. That was the problem with people like Jason. They never believed in consequences. Only comfort. I followed him in. The living room was exactly how I remembered. Same couch. Same framed photos. Same illusion of control. My father was sitting at the table. My mother in the kitchen. When he saw me, he didn't react immediately. Just sighed. You came to argue again? I shook my head. No, I came to clarify something. Jason leaned against the wall. My mother didn't look up. My father gestured dismissively. Say it fast. I pulled out a folder. And placed it on the table. Slowly. Carefully. This house, I said, is legally mine. Silence. My father blinked once. Then scoffed. That's ridiculous. Jason laughed. Did you lose your mind? My mother finally looked up. Confused. I opened the folder. Deed. Trust documents. Transfer records. Each page landed like a weight. My voice stayed steady. My grandmother transferred full ownership to me 2 years ago. My father leaned forward. That's fake. I shook my head. No, it's registered. Jason stepped closer. This is some kind of joke. I turned to him. No joke. You've been living in my house. My mother stood slowly. Her voice cracked slightly. Adrian, what are you saying? I looked at her. I'm saying you've all been tenants. My father slammed his hand on the table. You're trying to steal from your own family. I didn't react. Because I had already heard that sentence before. From people who were already losing. Then I said the line that changed everything. No, you stole from me emotionally for years. I just made it legally accurate. A pause. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Jason broke it first. This is insane. We don't even pay rent to you. I nodded. That's correct. Silence. My father frowned. So, what do you want? I looked around the room slowly. At the walls. The memories. The years I was invisible in it. And then I said it. I want you to sign a proper lease. My father blinked. A what? A lease. Under my terms. Jason laughed again. You're joking. I looked at him. No, I'm not. My voice dropped slightly. Because right now, you're all here illegally if I choose to act on it. That sentence changed the air. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just final. My mother sat back down slowly. My father looked at the papers again. For the first time, actually reading them. Jason stopped smiling. Because he finally understood something was different. Something irreversible. Then my phone buzzed. Nathan. I stepped aside and answered. What is it? His voice was urgent. Adrian, they just tried to contact a real estate attorney. I closed my eyes slightly. About? They're trying to challenge ownership. A pause. And Adrian, they're about to find out they can't. I looked back into the room. My father was still staring at the papers. Jason was silent now. My mother was crying quietly. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't angry because I was wrong. They were panicking because I wasn't. And that's when I said the next words out loud. By tomorrow, you will all either sign my lease, or you will be removed from my property legally. Jason stepped forward instantly. You wouldn't do that. I looked at him. And, for the first time, I didn't hesitate. You already did it to me. Silence. Heavy. Breaking. And then, my father finally spoke. What are your conditions? And that was the moment everything shifted.